Good evening and welcome to Imperial Advisor episode 11. On the show tonight we've got Baz, Justin and Eoin. Unfortunately Andy can't be here, he's off in Stockholm, which sounds far more exciting than being on a Alpha Vor show, frankly. And tonight we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about some of the cards from Tears of Amaterasu. We're going to recap the L5 Honored event, which all the guys went to, apart from me. We're going to briefly just mention the Battle for Rokugan board game that was announced, obviously set in L5 and World. And we're going to do something that we haven't done before, but a lot of people have kind of asked to do. We're going to do a little trial run of some deck analysis, and to kick that off we're going to do a run through of Owen's Crab single core deck that he won Hashimoto with at Gen Con. And we might do that as a separate YouTube video, so people who are interested in that can sort of find that and watch it directly without listening to the rest of our waffle. So guys, what have you been up to for the last couple of weeks since we spoke last? Otherwise, or otherwise?
Yeah, so, well, last time I was seriously playing was at Alpha War Honored. Since then, I deliberately took a I'm going to take a little break for a while because I was getting really depressed. Thinking, oh God, I've got to go to Worlds now, and you never want to be planning another trip while in an airport because you just start getting really depressed at an airport. Why am I here? So I have been planning a Crab Dishonor deck, and I kind of built a draft of it, and I'm going to take a look. I have some concerns about it as I was building it, because it's weird, because you don't have a huge number of choices, but the choices seem really important. And yeah, I'm going to build that, take it out for a spin, and see what works and what doesn't. But that's kind of next week.
Yeah, so similar enough. The Alpha 4 Honored was a lot of good fun. And now I've actually got my hands on some cards. I've been putting together some single core decks just to play around with. So as of the weekend, I'd managed to teach my wife how to play. So now I've got a consistent opponent who unfortunately is already beating me. Not a great sign. And the other thing I did was for Imperial Advisor, I put together a list of decks for the 3-core environment. So I made a couple of assumptions on what the environment would look like, largely assuming that the Scorpion and Crab Dishonor decks would stick around, and a lot of things would kind of come from that. I've been getting some feedback and some suggestions, so I've been kind of slowly updating those decks as they go along. But yeah, right now it's just trying to get the grips with that new environment and see where that goes.
Yeah, kind of much the same. Started building Phoenix decks. Built a military deck, didn't really like it. Took it apart, built a control deck, liked that much more. So yeah, just kind of getting hype with all the guys in the locality near where I'm living, and putting together decks, sorting out clans, working out what we're going to be doing, and yeah, just eagerly anticipating the official launch when everybody can get product and we can all start playing complete full decks together, which is going to be great. Yeah. So we've got a few together at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of on the 5 ring side of it, and also started writing up written up an article which should be going up on Imperial Advisor hopefully in the next kind of couple of days, just about the philosophy that has guided how I design decks. Now it's not necessarily going to be as applicable for new 5R as for old 5R. Just because of the way the game's constructed, because new 5R is like in old 5R, each clan that you played was essentially like a different environment almost. They were so distinct, and there was just there were a lot of levels of complication that you had to negotiate. Whereas new 5R is, I think the clans just very much put a spin on how you play, but you're essentially playing the same game, no matter what clan you play. So As I said, I'm not sure how entirely applicable those ideas will transfer, but it's a starting point to at least, start putting together some thoughts on how deck construction and playstyle actually work and interact in New Five Rings. So we can just start kind of theory crafting and developing a theory of the game. So that's it. That's been me.
And for me, I've been playing my first sort of games at real cards, not on Tabletop Simulator, which has been quite a lot of fun. Dave Robotham, who's one of the really active guys in the London scene, has been running sort of learn to play sessions. And I went along with a Proxy Adept Scorpion deck and played a few games with him, which was really a lot of fun. And I've just been sort of getting to know a lot of the sort of London L5R crowd, lots of new players into the game.
Yeah, Dave's an awesome guy. So
yeah, absolutely. So moving on, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about some of the stories that have come out since Gen Con, since we sort of ignored that the last time round. There was the result of the story prize story, and then just last week we had the Garden of Lies story focusing on the Scorpion clan and the duel with the dragon Kitsuki. So I think maybe it'd be good to start with the Gen Con story. I think there's also a bit more happened to that. And Justin, I think you might be the good person to kick that off.
Indeed. Well, I mean, there is only one word to take from the Gen Con storyline, and that is Shahai. Now, for all players of the game, Shahai is going to be a well-known and well-beloved name. A well-known, well-beloved character. So in the current, like in the new Five Rings, in the current version, Shahai appears to be, a well-intentioned and skilled Meishodo practitioner who will be teaching the Seppen how to. Well, they'll be teaching the Seppen the practice the magic of Meishodo. In the old storyline, she was a batshit crazy blood speaker who had her grandfather's floating skull beside her, which she kept as a personal advisor after murdering him and I think most of the rest of her family. So when we take that in concert with the ruby-like medallion that was paraded by the unicorn through the Imperial capital right past the Emperor, and then we mix that in with the Sawa Keide's precognition or visions of a dark figure spreading rivers of blood through the valleys of Rokugan. There's a pretty solid chance, I think, that we're talking about the Ruby of Yuchiban himself, and Shahai's days of innocently practicing Meishodo are. I'd give it a solid 50-50 chance that those days are coming to a rapid close, and she will soon be butchering her family, and enchanting various skulls. We can only hope. So this is what you get for keeping Meishodo in rock again, people. Well done. Well done. Actually, I mean, in fairness, yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fairness, I think it's shown the story team's willingness to screw over the player base ish, no matter what they choose. So this bodes fantastically well for the future of the story. No matter what you decide, it's going to be bad, and if they keep this up, it's going to be an amazing ride. So yeah, that was kind of the Gen Con story. At least that's a brief editorial on the Gen Con story. But yeah, super. Shahai's back. Things are looking evil and awful. It's a great start.
It does set up a nice two-tier system to the stories, where on one hand the new players are looking at it going, "Oh, Shahai, okay, perfect candidate for a teacher. She sounds interesting. I'd like to know more about her." And then the old players are like, "Oh my God, this is But of course, it could go a completely different direction. Like Shahai could be the great leader that we rally behind to finally defeat the Blood Speakers. Anything could happen. I mean, it won't. I mean, but it
Yeah,
could.
frankly, that would be a shocking waste of material and potential right there. No, Shalhai's if Shalhai turned into a legitimate heroine, that would be awful, awful.
No,
She's an
well,
amazing,
oh
she's
yeah,
an
if
amazing bad guy.
no, no,
She's an amazing villain.
I agree with you, but I mean, I think we could certainly push it a little bit. So if we put her on enough of a pedestal, the fall will be so much harder.
Yeah, it's fair.
And what do you think of a Ichiban as a potential antagonist making a return and antagonizing the great clans?
It's a good thing.
I'm super happy. I'm super happy. In the old story, he was one of the. I mean, Fu Leng was the big bad, like the ultimate evil of the just the storyline of the entire universe. But Ichiban was not far behind. He was he's just like a legendary, almost mythical demigod-like figure who just sown destruction wherever he went. And he got a bit of a short shrift in the old story. He had a couple of great appearances, and then unfortunately he had to run up against Daigatsu in kind of like the closing act of his story. And Daigatsu just had plot armor a mile thick, so Ichiban lost, which was a shame because he's just a fantastically. He's just a fantastic villain. He's selfishly motivated. There's no kind of cackling grand. There's no kind of arch villain cackling grand scheme. He is purely out there to wreck people and to increase his own personal power at the expense of everybody else. So, which maybe actually is a kind of grand villainish.
As a villain,
Anyway.
he's not going to assemble this giant army that's going to stand outside the crab wall and do anything like that. It's all going to be targeted corruption, taking down key figures one at a time. It's going to be small cults within cities across the empire. So there's no real chance for all the clans to unite and kind of do anything against them, unless you're talking a more kind of personal story driven focus. So rather than having the clans unite to face each other, you're going to have 2 or 3 characters from each of the clans getting into the story, discovering what's going on, and kind of having an RPG style duke it out with this bad guy. He is a perfect first. Now the danger is we do a Star Wars on it and accidentally take out Maul in the first act when really he should be going the whole way through. So we don't want to see Ichiban being punked out straight away. I think we want a little bit of tension and maybe his plans defeated at the start if we're lucky or unlucky, depending on which way he's pitching. But to continue that and have it going. And we'll get onto it, but we're starting to see the Shadowlands appear for the clans. So maybe a little bit more of that corruption, the occasional blood sword. They're really good for dueling. Those crane players will be delighted.
Hachiko's already got one. So.
Is that your theory that Kachiko has ambition?
That's certainly, like, if you're reading in between the lines of the Scorpion fiction, certainly, as I said, Shoju was presented as a much more philosophical, much more reserved and considered character,
definitely.
while Kachiko was absolutely pushing the let's dominate everything. And absolutely.
Beyond what was appropriate.
Absolutely. Beyond what was even rational, So, man, that would be a fantastic twist. That would be a fantastic twist. And you could actually build up a really Shakespearean kind of tragedy around that dynamic, the fact that Shoju is desperately trying. You could put a real Macbeth angle on that, actually. So it'll be interesting to see it's interesting to see how they develop those two.
Which will, of course, will curse the entire storyline, taking down everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But just skipping back to Ichiban again, he's a fantastic villain because he is, as Baz was saying, he operates. He's a real power behind the throne. He operates in the shadows. He operates rationally. He operates carefully. at least judging by kind of previous appearances and how he's done things before. And he's also individually incredibly powerful. So he's, if we are looking at kind of a much more character-based, several members from each clan being drawn into a web and going after him, they will face significant personal danger going after Yuchiban. He's not a pushover, nothing like it. And then he'll just up and drown the Empire in blood because he's done that before. So we'll see.
He also occasionally gifts people and gifts clans with artifacts of incredible power. So there are opportunities for the clans to gain from a Yuchiban.
On that note, could you elaborate a little bit on the ruby?
Yeah, so the ruby, there's not a huge amount on the ruby, but the ruby was basically an artifact that Yuchiban used to control the wills and spirits of other people. So in the storyline, again, in Old 5R, there was a really super awesome cult called the Blood Speakers, who were essentially Yuchiban's. They were super awesome. Who were essentially Yuchiban's kind of personal followers. They were personally allied and sworn to serve Yuchiban. But Yuchiban controlled them, so he exerted a measure of his own personal will over each one of those individuals. And there was a big part of the story about the Blood Speakers breaking free and Yuchiban dying, all that kind of stuff. But the ruby is an artifact specifically for mind controlling, or bending the mind and spirit of an individual to serve Yuchiban's will. So if that's the artifact that is being toted around, then Yuchiban could easily be using that to influence anyone who might be involved in teaching Meishodo to the Seven. It's just a possibility. So we'll have to see.
Cool. I think quite exciting sort of prelude to sort of where some of the conflict may come from. And I think it sort of lines up a lot with sort of what Katarina and some of the story team have said about wanting, I guess, particularly sort of as the game starts out, to have that sort of the conflict be internal amongst the clans rather than some existential threat, which actually kind of probably is going to bring the clans together rather than. Yeah,
Yuchiban's a real divide and conquer kind of bad guy. He'll set events in motion and then just let things turn to chaos and reap the benefits. So he is ideal as a villain for interclan conflict for sure.
Okay, and then the most recent story then was the Garden of Lies. Focusing on a little bit of sort of the tension and the politics and the protocol of duels. And then with the protagonist sort of was Yogo Hure, who was sort of seen as in the core set, and the dragon Kitsuki Shomon. Baz, what did you...
well, at only 5 pages and in a sudden abrupt cutoff... It was quite jarring to get halfway through it and realize I presumably have to wait another week, so maybe a few more days for us to find out what actually happens.
Someone said it's going to be Fumio the cat, who's the thing that surprises them at the end.
Definitely not Ninja. Having more on Ryoko Owari is nice. It is... I guess more from the story perspective, is possibly one of the most important places in the entire empire. It's where stuff happens and things get done. So seeing that and kind of hearing a few more details is very nice. This is very much a scorpion and dragon story, at least so far, which is kind of cool. It is. There had always been a kind of good relationship between them, which was a little ironic. I guess in part it's because the scorpion are fascinated by people's secrets, while the dragon don't really have anything to tell. I think it's hard to know. Like it's kind of webs and enigmas, but they for some reason always got on well. And even though there was a duel happening and there was kind of politicking, it all seemed quite friendly to an extent, which was nice. Seeing a duel go down was very cool. I did like that. I always see kind of complaints that it was an Iyatsu duel, and a Miramoto, or in this case Katsuki, was using two blades. Whatever. it's a duel. Two swords were used. It was the quick draw. It is not a big deal unless you're a Kakita and are very, very specific on how you do these things. But the rest of the Empire gets on regardless. I enjoyed it. But yeah, I really want to find out what's happening next, because it's really just establishing characters and kind of giving a bit of a flavor. We get to see a little bit more about the kind of what's happening in the background with the dragon, because a couple of questions are asked about this little cult, and how the Perfect Land sect is, I guess, influencing the spiritual approach to Rokugan. But this Katsuki Shomon definitely does not seem too happy about it, which is very interesting. So yeah, I definitely want to hear more, and I'm looking forward to where the story goes.
Yeah, it's kind of. I thought one thing was interesting is that we've seen, I guess, a few different, a few characters maybe that's starting to hint at they sort of going against the grain of clan archetypes. But this one I thought was very much the stoic dragon and the devious scorpion, kind of hitting the archetypes on the head. Justin, do you take anything else? I mean, I'm not sure there's tons more.
I disagree slightly with this hitting the kind of the archetypal dragon on the head. Because I mean, certainly it painted Showman as very much kind of like a rugged individualist, which I suppose is in keeping with how the dragon are in a lot of ways. But the fact that she was involved in, essentially teaching peasants how to fight, when you have, again, rumors of this Perfect Land sect, and it's farmer followers gathering together into bands and armies in the mountains. That's quite a troubling. It's quite a troubling connection, and it's made all the more interesting by the fact that she's a Katsuki, and so you would expect her to be actually far more rational and causality minded than most Rokugani would be. So, yeah, I'm really interested to find out what Hiroe is angling for. I mean, obviously information about what's going on, but we haven't really been given a completely specific hook yet.
No. Yeah.
It was Hiroe comes across as pretty awesome. Actually, it was great to see that he was basically a seducer of both men and women.
Yeah, Scorpion Clan seductress. Well, not with the
Scorpion Clan
press
seductor.
at the end, but there's a long history there.
He's basically a seducer, and by the text, he seduces men and women. So maybe in different ways, who knows? But it was fascinating again to see.
And he is very beautiful in his card.
Again, it's just it's kind of great to see the Scorpion portrayed as again people who just get shit done. They have a mission. They complete it. They do whatever they have to. So that was really nice.
Yeah.
As I said, I mean, against all expectation and all likelihood, the story team have made the Dragon Clan interesting, and I really can't wait.
Yeah, that is.
And I really can't wait to find out more about the Perfect Land sect. And again, like this whole thing about the age of declining virtue. I mean, it's like there's this real. Actually, they're already introducing this real kind of eschatological end of the world sort of feeling. At least at least as it pertains to the dragon.
Oh yeah, they could be a generation or two from completely disappearing at this rate.
Yeah, from collapse. And this is really amazing because this actually introduces real stakes for the Dragon Clan where they never had any before, and the dragon suffered badly story-wise because of it. I mean, if you're the inscrutable kind of individual or clan that knows everything that's going on and then just waits for the perfect moment to act and everything, they're like they're like an even worse version of the Scorpion in a lot of the ways, because like the Scorpion are the guys who never lose. Like, oh, that's what we meant. That it looks like we got horribly beat, humiliated. That's exactly what we wanted to happen. And the Dragon were the supernatural, even worse version of that, because there's no kind of, again, like there's no anchoring in reality or stakes or anything like that to really give, as I said, just a sense of stakes or a sense of potential danger or loss to what they're doing. Yeah. So by introducing the storyline, they've made the Dragon instant underdogs to forces that are really quite powerful and outside their control, which is really compelling. So it's just an amazing win for me. I think the Dragon are actually probably the most interesting clan.
Just when we're talking about Shomon's openly training the peasants in hand-to-hand combat, which isn't actually too uncommon for the Dragon. Like the Dragon are known for actually teaching the Ashigaru and the Hemnan. A lot of them can read and are well versed in religious lore. So that I'm not surprised by the hand-to-hand combat. Shomon actively is teaching them aspects of Bushido, though, which is one of the more controversial parts. And it does kind of sound like she is trying to instill those core tenets as a counterpoint to the perfect land sect, which essentially has the, repeat these things over and over and over again. So in the next life, you'll get rewarded, which is kind of a different approach to Bushido, which is serve your lord and do what you need to do now. Don't worry so much about the next life.
It could be a veiled reference to the Christian, the Christian persecutions that took place in Japan.
But
because again, a reward in the next life, that smacks of Christianity all over.
But this happening in Raiko Owari sets the story away, so we really don't know what's happening up in the Dragonlands. And this particular story is really, for me at least, opening that tension, because it sounds more and more that there are crazy things happening. Like one of the bits mentioned is the peasant armies assembling. And it doesn't sound like it was assembling under the Dragon, so that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. And I think what's kind of interesting is like we saw about in the Dragon story about them recruiting more lowborn people and bringing them, making them samurai in the broader term, but doing that in Scorpion lands is kind of. There's not as obvious sort of a reason why that's being done. Whereas obviously in the Dragon, it's in part about boosting.
There is a distinction there. There's no one in Ryoko Owari who's being accepted as a samurai. But for the Dragon, they seem to be actively going out and going, no, this one was a samurai all along. It just looked like they weren't, because they're desperate for the numbers. Which I think if that got out, oh my, like that's messing with the Celestial Order on a whole new level. Like, you should not be doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think maybe let's have a look at some cards.
Yeah.
Might be a good thing to do next, and specifically some Tears of Amaterasu cards. So. I know. I was saying before the show how it's one of those words that I've learned wrong and can never say right anymore. I don't know. Should we just sort of go through them sort of quickly? There's maybe let's start with kind of perhaps the most interesting one, which is as I understand, it wasn't in the original article, but it has since been spoiled elsewhere.
Yeah, so it was one of the French fans for the Goblin Sneak, I think, wasn't
it? Was it a Spanish one? It might have been a Spanish fan. I'm not sure.
It was one of the foreign translations.
I think it might have been Spanish.
Foreign.
So it was a 2 fate 1 zip Goblin Shadowlands, I think, and its ability was Steal a Fate, basically, when it comes into play.
Yeah, so it's a 2-cost 1/1, and when it comes into play, your opponent loses a fate, and it gets a fate on it. Oh, sorry, it's a 1/0.
Is it 1/1?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you
One-
one zip. Yeah, you take a
one
fate
zip.
from your opponent's pool
One
and
dash.
put it on the Goblin Sneak.
So one thing yeah.
From your
So
opponent's
we
pool.
don't know if it is a conflict character or not. So I'm hoping it's a conflict character. Because if it's a conflict character, you can wait till your opponent has just that one fate left. You're about to go in for that attack, and then you drop in your Goblin Sneak. Now all of their cards that cost 1 are no longer an option, and then you charge in. That would be delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be
very
delicious to the
interesting.
point.
It would change the sort of little fate meta almost. You would really have to start thinking about.
I'm not sure I'd
do
be
I want to
100%
spend all
keen
my
on
fate?
that if it were a conflict character. As a conflict character, I think with that ability, it has the capacity to severely impact the environment. And it's the kind of card that everybody plays because it can have such a destructive effect on someone's ability to defend. But on the other hand,
the power level of some of the cards we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean absolutely. The thing is, as a dynasty character, it's unplayably bad. I think I just cannot see myself ever making room for this card under any circumstances. Like, you could actually put a proper card in a dynasty slot, but as a conflict character, it would be incredibly powerful.
Which is hilarious. It's like there's 2 decks, and if it goes in one deck, you don't play it. If it goes in the other deck, everyone plays it.
Yeah. I think so. Certainly, I mean, if you're playing an aggressive deck, an aggressive military deck, then if this is a conflict character, 3 straight in. It's not even.
So line corruption confirmed.
I certainly hope so. That would be delicious. Tim Wells, I know you're not watching, but this one's for you, buddy. But yeah, and the most important word, the single most important word in the entire expansion that we've seen so far, and it will be the most important word in the entire expansion, and that is Shadowlands.
And I think there's no actual just honor loss for playing it.
Not that we've seen.
There's no.
Not that we've seen.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, which is kind of, I guess, in terms of making Shadowlands, whatever they do with that, if there's an archetype or, we talked about the idea of there being something like a role that works with Shadowlands. But I mean, it's very apparent that the bracket of honor, that you're playing in is a very narrow window, and if there is sort of significant honor losses, it would make cards kind of almost unplayable.
Oh yeah. I mean, but there's still quite a lot of design room to play with. I mean, we haven't seen a character that says when they enter play, gain 1 honor or something like that, or gain 2. Gain 2 might be a lot, but there's a huge amount of design space around honor and dishonor that can still be developed. So, I wouldn't worry about that yet.
I'm pretty sure we have seen a character that lets you gain honor, or is it they become honored? Is that what it is? One of the lion characters.
There's an honored.
Does he gain you honor when he enters play? Or
a Colm Prodigy.
Oh no, there is
cost 0-2. Yeah, reaction after 1 or more fate is placed on this character, gain 1 honor, and I think that really cuts out the last thing that they have. So Elfavor out of ideas. First confirmed here.
Yeah, that's it.
Game over. Time to pop it up.
Yeah,
they've run out of design space. Okay. And so let's just look at a few of the others. So there was a Crane event, Disdainful Remark, which is one of these rule-specific or rule-restricted cards. So this is keeper rule only. Action during a conflict. If you control a participating courtier character till the end of the conflict, the attacked province gets plus X strength. X is equal to the number of cards in your opponent's hand. So if you control a courtier, you get province strength equal to your opponent's hand. So I guess it's kind of interesting. So 1 cost, 1 influence. Any thoughts, guys?
Card's ludicrous. Yeah, card's ludicrously good. Actually, you take a look at cards like this, and all of a sudden, a conflict version of Goblin Sneak seems entirely reasonable. Yeah, it's better than it's probably better than Miramoto's Fury.
It does remind me of Miramoto's Fury in terms of, it's a really good
it's arguably
save
better
a
than
province sort of card.
Fury. arguably better. It's better and worse in certain ways. I mean, you have to have a participating courtier, so you have to defend. So there's no
Yeah, it
kind
needs to
of
be
there's none of
participating.
the usual Miramoto's Fury garbage of like, no attack, no defenders, and then just bowing out their single giant unit and losing an honor, but then having like more guys to swing back at them. So you are required to effectively bow a character with this.
And this won't help you win that ring on the defense. So with Muramoto's Fury, you can bow a couple of guys, and then your one skill character wins the day. Whereas Disdainful Remark is just about saving your province.
Yeah. But there again, it's one influence versus two, which is a huge difference. It's an amazing card. It's an amazing card. Keepers will be super happy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit last time. Any thoughts on sort of the keeper role versus seeker role only?
I like it.
I'm all for it. Anything that just introduces a bit of bifurcation into the card pool, and further gives further meaningful deck decisions. Then that's pretty good.
Yeah.
We still have to see exactly what their plan is for the 3 roles that weren't chosen. But I don't know. It's again, it's a way of printing cards, but not bloating the card pool overly much. So
it also makes that decision over whether to go for keeper or seeker a lot more interesting. And now a couple of people have raised the point that it's going to be a full year at this stage, so people are going to get the Worlds. Hopefully, all of Tears of Amaterasu will be spoiled. I would be surprised if we've seen much beyond that, if we've even seen the second pack. But
so
Tears
won't
be
be legal at Worlds.
Worlds is in November. We believe Tears should be out for December. The point is, Crane and Lion have seen some of their keeper and seeker only roles, so they have a little bit more information. And as if we get a few more spoilers, we can see more. Some clans are going to have a better idea of what their upcoming year is. And we've talked about this before. A year is a long time, and these are really influential choices. If Crane go with Seeker, they're completely locked out of Disdainful Remark. They just cannot ever play it. Everyone else gets access to it, but they don't. And that's pretty scary.
It'll make it it'll also make the splashing decisions, I guess, a lot more dynamic in some ways. That you have to look at if you've got a keeper role for your clan and another clan is a seeker. You could have access to their cards that they don't typically have access to in organized play. That maybe people, as the pool expands, that people aren't as familiar with those cards, so they don't see them coming in quite the same way. I think it'll be interesting to see how the seeker keeper restrictions sort of roll out and play. I think the length of time is the one concern.
Like if Crane end up picking a seeker role this time round, and then next year they pick another seeker role. Oof. But hey, that's if I ever get to make those kind of decisions, I'll be a happy man. So it's a burden that will rest lightly on whatever Hadamoto gets to make those decisions.
Would you guys like to hear some breaking news?
Yes, please.
FFG just announced a revised core set for Android Netrunner.
Ooh.
Oh wow, good. That's great.
Yeah.
That bodes really well for L5R.
It does.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's been really needed for Netrunner and has been asked for. And if they're doing that, they're beginning to get their stuff together. That is fantastic news for us as well as Netrunner players.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. Let's look at another Asawa K-Day. Shugenja Void, 5 Fate. I think this is the first non-champion with 5 cost we've seen. correct me if I'm wrong, a 3 military, 4 politics, 3 glory, immune to opponent's ring effects. While this character is attacking, the contested ring gains the void element. If this character wins the conflict as an attacker, instead of choosing an element to resolve each of that ring's effects.
Absolute rubbish.
So,
She's pretty good.
I hate this card so much.
all fates are one. A
And
at least not a champion, but better.
she does
flavor
have
text.
much better flavor text than Sukune. It is true. It is true. Yeah, she's
Justin?
on first
Thoughts?
blush, and on all subsequent blushes that I've had, she's ludicrous. Obviously, okay, so 3-4, those are poor stats for a 5-cost character, but from that point on, she is absolutely bananas. So, immune to opponent's ring effects is the single most powerful trait we've seen in the game so far. She cannot have her fate removed by void. She cannot be bowed with water. She can't be dishonored by fire. So once she's on the board, there are obviously your opponent's got their fate hand their conflict hand to help deal with her, but that's it. And yeah, as soon as Kata becomes legal, the Shibi Yojimbo becomes an automatic 3-of inclusion in every Phoenix deck, because if you've got the Yojimbo and Kata on the board at the same time, she is basically untouchable. And that is a terrifying proposition. Moving on to the second part of her ability, which basically gives the contested ring the void element when she's attacking. This also points the way to the style of deck you can expect to see out of Phoenix in the very near future, which is basically stripping your board to absolutely nothing and just basically choking you out through fate constriction. So this means that the Phoenix can use the Void Ring on a single turn to strip a fate from one of your guys, and then they can attack with K-Day and strip a fate from one of your guys. And if they've got Against the Waves, then they can straighten K-Day and attack again and strip another fate from one of your guys.
Yeah, because it's not an action, it's just a trait.
It's not an action, it's just a trait. So this, she's just a centerpiece character in both military and control. She's an absolute powerhouse. I'm honestly flabbergasted at how good she appears to be. Obviously, I mean, maybe we get her on the board and it turns out that those 3-4 stats are actually kind of crippling for her cost of 5. But yeah, she looks ludicrous. And I mean, they're all like, there's a whole bunch of other different kind of little tricks you can pull with her. She's also unbelievably terrifying in conjunction with the Acolyte of Water, because you can give her covert during a water challenge. Go over declare your water challenge, covert their main defender. And then because you've got 2 effects going off at the same time, you can decide which order to resolve them in. So you can resolve the Void ring first, removing a fate from one of their personalities, and then use water to out the personality because it doesn't have water. It doesn't have any fate on it anymore.
Very nice.
Yeah, so she the more I look at her and the more I've kind of thought about what she can do, she just I mean, in 05 Arasawa Kede was one of the elemental masters who are the absolute most powerful Shigenja in the Empire, in the world. And if this is the power level of each of the masters, then Phoenix are going to be spoiled for crazy choice in 6 months or a year's time. She's amazing. She's just amazing.
So at least they've kept that theme of the Phoenix going, which is kind of bits and pieces at the start and then ridiculous power by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like we've seen this. I mean, obviously she's the first kind of master level character that we've seen. She will be the master pretty soon, I'm sure, once her father goes nameless or becomes the nameless one, if he does. But if all the masters have this ability, like if when the character is attacking, the contested ring gains their element, I mean, boy, shenanigans that are going to start cropping up in Phoenix decks. I mean, if you've got Suke, who will probably have a kill action because that's what Suke does. you're going to have, Tsuka is going to be wandering around with the kill action with Masahiro backing him up in case there are any smaller people that need killing. And yeah, it's I'm obviously as a Phoenix player, I'm salivating.
The peaceful, peace-loving
peace.
Phoenix clan.
Advocates of peace.
So what if
Yeah.
one of the
For
ones
other
that I
people,
liked
though,
with,
not for them.
this Sawakeda, if you're attacking with her, you're going for water. So it's water and void. You then drop your secret of knowledge. It's water and void and air. You're going to trigger all of them. But if you wave the Phoenix at that ring, then that water ring, your opponent cannot declare any of those elements.
This really surprised me. This ruling boggles me. Actually, I don't think it's that seems
so
ludicrous,
yeah. So
that seems
the idea is that rather than getting extra rings when you're attacking, the ring you're attacking with ends up with extra elements. And the wording of Way the Phoenix says that they cannot declare attacks of the element of the ring that you chose. So I can understand the reasoning, but it's a bit of a weird one. But it can end up in a situation where your opponent just cannot pick a ring because you've ended up, Wave the Phoenixing 2 or 3 of them. Obviously, if you can only do this while you're attacking with the Seeker and with Kade. Yeah. But I mean, if you have to go for complete shenanigans, you can just switch to one you just claimed out with an extra ring. So you could actually have all 3 of those rings sitting there for your opponent, unable to claim. So they just have to pass. No conflicts for them.
Yeah, I do not like that. I do not like the idea of that at all. But anyway, maybe that'll get sorted out in the future. But she's ludicrous. She's, again, like the 3/4 stance, that's the only thing that can possibly, that might bring her down. But I don't think it will. She's bananas.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep moving. So, Karada District, a +1 province strength holding, limit 1 per deck. I think that's the first time we've seen that sort of text. An Imperial keyword. And then the action, give an opponent 1 fate, choose an attachment on a character that player controls, take control of that attachment and attach it to an eligible character you control if able, otherwise discard it. So we've seen a few things like Let Go that sort of interact with attachments. Scorpion obviously have one as well.
So first off, I was wondering about the 1 per deck thing, and I had to think about it, and it's the only way to do uniqueness with a holding, because holdings don't enter play. They just flip face up, and then you can use them. You couldn't have a situation where you flip 2 unique holdings and you just be like, well, I guess I have both of them because there's no rules text to say I have to discard them or anything. It's just I can't bring them into play, but holdings don't come into play. They're just in your province doing their thing. So that's why the limit per deck thing. That makes it a little unpredictable because you can only have 1 copy in your deck. Now, if you're a little bit, compulsive, it's nice because, hey, now you can have 13 3-ofs and 1 1-of, which is always nice. And I know people like that are like, I'm very annoyed because I have to run 3-ofs and then 1 single 1-of. And that's how my brain works. I know some very good players who are like that. But on to the actual effect, it's huge. It is expensive.
Yeah. 13 times 3 is 39 plus 1. It's perfect.
Expensive in that you're giving a fate to your opponent, which is a big deal. But it's massive on the board. Like you can't drop a really powerful attachment when that's sitting across. You're gonna have to tempt it out with something else. If you threw down a Sashimono on your personality of choice, that Sashimono is coming over to my side of the table, and your guy's bowing from that military conflict. If you throw down any of the 2-cost attachments, and there are some good 2-cost attachments become dodgy as all hell because of that card. It's huge pressure. And another good holding for Crab, so, Crab are happy.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like even on, some of the cheap attachments, the swing is, you're often getting even for a fine katana, it's a 4 swing, which is pretty significant in a conflict. Any other
Well,
thoughts, Justin?
as a dragon player, it's pretty terrifying. I mean, dragon are going to be sticking attachments everywhere, and like worst case scenario, Togashi Kazue is changing teams all of a sudden, and stealing fate from the dragon and giving it to the crab rather than the other way around. I think it's an absolutely fantastic holding. I think possibly one of the balancing factors about it is there are a lot of good holdings already for crab, and at some point they have to say no more holdings. I need to quit. But I think this is one that will make it into a lot of them. Personally, I think that crab are going to go down a dishonor route, and I think that hand lock makes things very difficult for a lot of clans. One of the potential solutions that have been bandied around is to use the unicorn's spyglass. But if everyone's using spyglass and the crab are using Karada District, the crab are just drawing more cards, and that's the other side will get their fate back, but they're not getting any cards out of it. Wonderful card.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as well because it gives an insight into how design views the relationship between fate and cards. Because this is something that's been, I mean, certainly at the start, we kind of thought that fate was all important and cards were kind of a very secondary resource. But now with card draw tied into honor, and with honor a very valuable resource, I'm kind of starting to swing in the other direction and begin to think the cards are maybe possibly just as valuable or more valuable than fate. And this is a card that would kind of bear that out actually in a lot of ways. It's like giving an opponent a fate is a 2-fate swing, and that's enormous. And you've got a 2-fate swing for a 2-card swing. And obviously, the attachment could be an expensive one, which may be a balancing consideration for this, so that actually your kind of things are working out worse if you're taking a 0-cost attachment. And I think even like just the kind of the sniff test, you look at that and think, yeah, that probably is kind of a bit of a bad deal. But even so, it does kind of start to point toward. Again, I don't know. I mean, but it starts to kind of give a hint of a relationship between the value of fate as compared to cards, and the relationship is a lot more close to equal than I would have thought, certainly at the beginning when the began. So that's just small addendum thought, but it's super good.
Cool. Okay. Next we've got Kitsuki Yaruma, 4 fate, 2 military, 4 politics, a 2 glory courtier with courtesy, and no poison attachments restriction, which is kind of interesting. Reaction: after this character enters play, choose an unbroken province, turn that province face down. It's also unique, I should add as well. Baz, do you want to start with this one?
I'm not a fan of this card, I have to admit. So 4 cost for a 2/4 is typical. 2 glory. Courtier isn't a trait that Dragon consistently have at the moment, so getting an extra courtier is good to kind of increase options there. Courtesy really helps. So once Yaruma leaves play, you get a fate back. So essentially, you're looking at really an early investment, but this is a 3 cost 2/4, which is a hell of a lot better than it originally looked. The no poison attachments, currently it just means that the Scorpion, Fiery Madness indeed, and that is actually significant because if Crane are splashing it, and I wouldn't be shocked if they were, that would bring Yaruma down to 2 politics, which would then let him get bowed. The ability, so reaction: after this character enters play, choose an unbroken province and turn that province face down. So what this does is it powers up your provinces that have reactions to unreveal. So you're talking about Elemental Fury, you're talking about Rally to the Cause. It does also work with the Dragon one, Restoration of Balance. That said, this is really timing dependent. You need to have revealed one of those provinces, so you're playing it and your opponent attacked it. Then you have successfully defended it. So it's going back face down again, and then your opponent, who knows what that card was, has to choose to defend it. On top of that, and a little ironically, normally having the unique trait or having it as a unique character is a good thing because you can discard cards to get extra fate on them. In this case, it means that you're not able to play this character again if it's already in play to get the reaction to trigger. So if you get Yuruma too early, you're not able to play a later one until you get rid of the initial one. And similarly, you're waiting for that courtesy to leave play. So I think if this, I don't know, I would have liked to see this as a cheaper character with maybe worse stats, so you could kind of churn through them, so you could get the trigger at a better time. But no, I'm not really a fan of Yuruma, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, perhaps a card that will improve with time.
I think if you see a second really nasty on-reveal province, I think Yuruma would start to become a concern for people. I'd certainly consider playing him. Just because, as I was saying, you need to be able to successfully defend. And the Dragon decks really aren't as heavily defensive as some of the other clans. Some of the other clans can run out the clock a bit better than Dragon. Dragon are really more looking to win the game. Possibly if there was an honor deck for Dragon a bit down the road, I could see him being a good factor. What I will say about him is he is a 2/4 courtier who's unique for 4. 4 politics is good outwit country. So I will give him that. The no poison attachments is just a funky little, mostly a flavor thing.
Yeah.
Where like Kitsuki are often immune to poison, and he that fellow notably was. Courtesy is nice, but it's kind of. I think he exists to kind of show you that they would consider that mechanic nearly, that little bit of design space they're willing to do. I don't know if he's going to see play immediately, but he could well be a card that gets revisited in a little while. He is a 4 politics courtier. That's the best thing I can say about him. And he is unique, which is also pretty good. But he doesn't have the board presence of some of the 4-costers. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Next up, we've got Smoke and Mirrors, a 1-cost event for Scorpion. A technique. Action. During a conflict, choose any number of attacking shinobi characters you control. Move each chosen character home. So, and 2 influence. So, kind of an interesting way of sort of giving Scorpion the ability to sort of feint or withdraw from a conflict maybe that's not going well. It's kind of interesting. I feel it's sort of hard at this point to sort of evaluate, but Justin, you kind of, what's your first?
Yeah, it's weird because this seems like a card that should be coming out more toward the end of a cycle than the beginning, because there just aren't a lot of shinobi around at the moment. So it is quite hard to evaluate. I mean, at the moment, this card does not seem all that great, I have to say, because your shinobi you've got the actress. Is it 3? You've got is it 3 or 4? You've got the actress.
The Adept of Shadows.
The Adept of Shadows, and there's also the 3/1 with Covert. That's a shinobi as well, is it? Hang on, break out the cards. Yeah, showing our movements. But
yes. As we all furiously start typing.
Yeah, the actress is a shinobi. You've got the Snow Ninja, who's a shinobi, and you've got the 2/2 that you can bounce, and I think maybe the 3/1. Yeah, the Adept, and I think maybe the 3/1 is a shinobi as well. The 3/1.
No, I think the 3/1 should be, but isn't.
But isn't. Okay, in that case, I could 3.
So it's Adept of Shadows, the conflict card, Shizuru Actress, the 1/3, and then Shizuru Miyako.
Yeah, which makes this actually a really bad card right now, because the Adept of Shadows you were going to be bouncing. You're not going to be retreating in fact, you just don't care about retreating the Adept because you're paying 1 honor to bring that card back to hand. So you're really looking at Yanako and the actress, and So you've got six potential cards total out of 40 that this card will be affecting, and you're paying 1 fate for it. So at the moment, this is a really bad card. I'm really puzzled by the 2 conflict costs. Also, the 2 influence costs as well. Only Scorpion have.
Since you can't imagine other
Yeah,
cards are going to be
so-
rolling in Shinobi.
Shinobi, Scout, or Cavalry, I would be all over that card. I'd be like, that's an excellent card.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's the fact is that it's so narrow. It's again like it's the kind of card that if we got a whole bunch of if we had a whole bunch of Shinobi characters first and then this came out, this would be much more exciting.
Yeah.
So we could be we could be grossly underestimating this card. But at the moment, it just doesn't achieve enough within the context of a Scorpion deck, I don't think. I would be very hard pushed to see what this is going to actually shove out of a deck and make a place for itself. So, at this point, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
For now, but again, this is
for now,
probably-
should we say. And I think
but yeah,
also...
this is a card that will absolutely be revisited.
And in the core set environment, we have seen it with favorable ground, where you attack with your big guy, and then they defend, and you're like, and then come back and then attack again. So, yeah, the actual effect is great, or good at least. But yeah, we'll have to wait for it to become playable.
Yeah, but it also one thing about that effect as well is that it's an effect that pushes toward a longer game because you're effectively sacrificing a single conflict in a turn for your feint. So it does toward a longer game, which is very much kind of part of the Scorpion's game plan anyway. If you want to maximize your stronghold militarily, so
Cool. Then we have Swift Magistrate, a 3-cost 2/2 for Unicorn, 1 glory, Bushi, Imperial, and Magistrate. While this character is attacking, each other character that has 1 or more fate on it does not count its skill towards the resolution of this conflict. Owen, do you want to...
Yeah, he's kind of a bruiser. It's really interesting. Apparently, all of the magistrates are going to have that effect. Some form where people, for whatever reason, do not contribute their skill towards the resolution of this conflict. It is also yet another unicorn who can't have cavalry.
Yes, but has a horse on the picture.
Has a horse. Have cavalry. You can't have cavalry with that. Because if you could have cavalry reserves in that, wow, that'd be just it'd be backbreaking. Like as bad as cavalry reserves already is, it will be super backbreaking.
Yeah.
So that's really strong. You would think it's weird because that is such a strong ability. If they did a defensive mirror of that for Crab, it would be so much more oppressive. Because the thing about attacking is you get to pick whether you defend or not.
Yeah.
If you have the same ability on someone who hits attackers, basically you can defend with, Also, critically, there is something of a double edge in this guy, which is it's each other character. It's not opposing characters. But, I mean, this person backed up by a cavalry reserves is, just unpleasant. Just unpleasant. Which is why I think Unicorn's best splash is Scorpion at the moment. Scorpion and a bunch of courtiers.
Why Scorpion?
So you can play a counter spell to counter their counter to make sure your cavalry lands.
Do you think they have enough courtiers to do that?
They have a conflict courtier, and they have another courtier, and you can always run a Tomo, and that is probably enough to do it because you can hold the conflict guy in hand. Just wait for okay, this is the turn I'm going to play cavalry reserves. I'll play down the conflict guy.
So this is a meta choice. So
absolutely.
Okay, that's
if you can get cavalry reserves to land with Unicorn, you win that battle. If it's the last battle, you win the game most of the time, assuming they get parity. So any clan like Crane or Scorpion are going to go right. Well, what do we got to stop? We've got to stop cavalry reserves. So we'll wait and we'll see. And once cavalry reserves come out, so you need to be able to go to there, or you're in trouble.
Wow. Okay, so everyone's splashing a little bit of blue. All right.
Crane or Scorpion, both have a counterspell, so both are perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, I think that the Scorpion one's a lot easier to trigger, though. At least if you've got the courtiers.
Yes.
Ooh.
Okay, look forward to seeing that. And then our last card is Time for War, a Lion Clan 0-cost event. A Seeker roll only event, so not for Lion at the moment in any organized play events, but possibly after Worlds, who knows. Reaction: when you lose a political conflict, choose a Bushi character you control, put a weapon attachment with printed cost 3 or lower into play from your hand or conflict discard pile attached to that character. 1 influence. Just don't think Clan will be choosing Seeker to get access to this.
Clans will be choosing Keeper to just get away from this. This card is, I mean, okay. I'm gonna say I've been wrong about cards, very, very wrong about cards before, but this looks like absolute garbage at the moment. There are so many conditions. First, you have to lose a political conflict, which I suppose you can arrange. That's not a big deal. Then you have to have a Bushi character in play, which you might not. Then you have to have a weapon. Yeah,
Quite likely for Lion.
No, absolutely for Lion. Absolutely. Very likely. And then you have to be playing weapons.
There are currently 4 weapons in the game. There is Fine Katana at 0, Ancestral Dice Show and Honored Blade at 1, and Jade Tetsubo at 2. There are no 3 costs. No 3 costs.
Yeah. Okay. So,
right. I've just realized that it's specifically a weapon,
this
not
is
any sort of
number
attachment.
3.
Yeah. Okay.
And
that's why it's so bad.
There are so many restrictions on what this, and this just doesn't put an awful lot into play. And then you're also investing a card. You're investing a card instead of paying fate. So potentially you can get a good trade-off there. And you can recycle a card from your conflict discard pile, which negates the card that you're spending. So that's obviously pretty good. But there are so many conditions in this card, which, granted, if you're playing a Lion deck or a Crab deck, you can actually pretty easily arrange. But again, is the payoff really all that big?
So right now I do feel that this is that Time of War is giving a small boost to Lion decks across the board, and because Lion cannot ever play this, it means that the only clans that could actually have their decks slightly marred by this terrible card is everybody else. Okay. Well, actually, no, it's just Phoenix and Scorpion right now.
Yeah. It's so. I mean, as I said, like there's a bunch of conditions for several decks. Those conditions really don't exist because you can always choose to lose a conflict. Like a whole bunch of decks, like Unicorn, Crab, Lion will have Bushi coming out their ears. You'll have the weapons. So I mean, the conditions aren't that egregious.
This is a card for the
all
future.
That said, this is a card for the future, and probably not even then. Because the effect is actually just really low impact. It's just I just don't like it.
So Jade Tetsubo is the other card you can play with it, which is okay.
Jade Tetsubo is good.
+2. Maybe if they reprint the clan swords and they cost 3, people will be like, "Oh, let's reevaluate this one."
Yeah,
because Fate is a lot for an attachment. And if the clan swords kind of come in and do as much as the old clan swords used to do, if they print them, that could be cool.
And I gather people did ask about that at Gen Con, and they were told no comment.
Yeah.
So is that a confirmation? It's close enough to a confirmation.
Well, I mean,
yeah, pretty much.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, there's no reason they wouldn't. Makes sense. Strongholds, clan champions.
It's a card for the future.
Yeah,
it's a card for the future, but like the Shinobi card, this is at the moment absolute garbage and shouldn't be looked at.
It asks an interesting question actually, because I assume when they're testing the packs, they test them as like a set. They take you basically, here's the dynasty, there's basically the first cycle, and maybe the first, maybe the first 2 cycles or something, and they go, here's all the cards, let's test them all together, and then we chop them up into packs.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're making that choice about what to put in when, like, you must be like, well, this mechanic is going to look totally orphaned and useless when you see this one card. It must be so weird to go, yeah, this is going to look kind of useless, guys. Sorry, but trust me, when you see the other 3 bits, this is going to look really good. But yeah, it's an interesting one to kind of be like, wow, what do we give them? Do you put all the thriller in the first few packs and then put the combo pieces in the last 3? That seems like it would sell badly. Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there could be all kinds of considerations that we're just not privy to that would force a card like this and the Scorpion Shinobi card into the first pack, where they are of dubious use within the card level. So yeah. Let's just move on. The time for war is not right now.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's wraps up the Tears of Amaterasu. Nailed it. And maybe let's talk about L5 Honored, which you 3 guys were all at. I played host for the weekend, and Andy commentated for the weekend. So, so maybe start with Baz, since you didn't get to go to Gen Con. What was your experience at the event like?
It was really enjoyable. It was great to meet everyone. I went 2-3, which I was really disappointed by. But all of my opponents were great to play against, and I came out of the event having really enjoyed myself because the games were a lot of fun, even if I did lose a lot. Yeah. So a little disappointed in myself. But I think it kind of... while the others will be talking about how well they did and how they enjoyed it, I think the fact that I lost so many games and still enjoyed myself says a lot about the game, and I'm really happy with that.
Yeah. Eoin, you got to use your Hatamoto privilege of leading some Banzais.
I was gutted. What happened was basically... What happened was Alex came up to me at the event. Alex Watkins, who was organising it, and said, "Sorry, my boss talked to me and said you have to lead the Banzais." I was like, "Okay, cool, man. If you got to do it, you got to do it." So myself and Gunnar were pointed out. We were, cheered at and clapped, and it was all cool. But yeah, he got to lead the Banzais, and they were thunderous.
Yeah,
they were a thunderous set. So yeah, it was interesting. I went 3-2 because on round 2. I met Az Johnson, and back in 2015, Az offered to concede to me in the finals of the Icelandic Kotai. And I said, well, now's the time. I played him, I beat him. I said, Az, now's the time. Do you want me to, I owe you a concession? And he's like, actually, yeah, that'd be great, man. And I said, full on. I conceded, and he got his badge. I was all good.
Nice.
I lost the game. A good tight game to Scorpion player who was playing defensively very well, and my deck went, oh, he got the favor, and then my deck went, oh, here, have 3 Atomos or 3 Sevens, and I was like, okay, that's not ideal. So yeah, I didn't win a conflict in that game. It was dreadful.
Cool.
There you
go. Yeah, I went 4-1.
Justin.
Consistency is just a model of consistency, of just not getting there. The one game I lost was an absolutely amazing game, a Phoenix Mirror match. I had 3 of those on the day, which was a bit unfortunate. But super close game. For once, I was the person who got Sukune out on the first turn, and I had my opponent Baptiste on 1 honor for 3 turns straight and just could not close the deal. It was he played fantastically. I really have to take my hat off to him. He played just a brilliant game. He was putting fate on Atomo courtiers and Seppin guardsmen, and basically just maintaining enough board position every turn to make it super just to basically make it impossible for me to break through and force an unopposed conflict, or to basically just win the air ring outright. So we got into, yes, we spent 3 turns of going backwards and forwards with basically laying traps for each other on every single conflict, where I would send in one guy and he would be forced to defend with 2 or 3 guys because he just couldn't risk me sending his guys home and ending up in an unopposed conflict, which would have caused him the game. And I was going over, like, attacking, with 3 guys with the air ring intending to lose, so he would claim the air ring, so he couldn't get the air ring on his swing back and gain 2 honor. It was, it was an amazing game. Time was called. I was ahead on tiebreakers, but he was so far ahead on board that the only right thing to do was concede. So that's what I did. But that's just fantastic games the entire day. Amazing atmosphere, and they're all, again, Gen Con was amazing just for the sheer scale of it and the pageantry, and London was amazing because it involved the players that we're closest to and the best friends with, and it was a real family reunion. Actually, it was wonderful, and especially with the knowledge that we'll be doing this a lot more in the future, that was super. So yeah, it was great.
And worth mentioning, Andy's not here. Him and Jack, supported by Alexi from Darksphere Games here in London, did an awesome job with the stream. I've watched some bits, and I know even from doing it myself, it's really tough to do. And I think they did an excellent job. And if anyone wants to catch those games, they're on the Darksphere YouTube page, so
they did an amazing job.
Check them out. But
you get to begin to psychoanalyze me as my game progresses and attempt to give you insights into my character. I'm sitting there going, "Okay, lads, that isn't what I was doing, but good on you."
That's not the point.
Doesn't have to be true.
The
You just got to fill the airtime.
Enjoyable, they are very, very watchable. Andy and Jack play well off against each other, and there's a lot of good discussion. They also have a couple of interviews with people, so they do interview a few of the winners, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. I think it's good for the game that it is so enjoyable to watch, and I think it's partly because there's so many kind of decision points, there's so many things going on, and the game is so damn pretty.
It's very
actually. Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead.
It is very, very difficult to actually judge the tempo of the game watching it, I think, and the lads do a good job actually explaining what's going on and what the tension points are, because it's actually, when you're spectating on the game, it's actually very difficult to figure out who's winning, because it's often not as obvious as the boards. You might think, oh, that person's miles ahead on board, but they're actually not winning. You think they're winning, but actually you start looking at some critical numbers. You're going, oh, actually, what honor is everybody on? Ooh, wow, that's really interesting. They're on that honor, and that person's on that honor, and ooh, this is actually much more complicated than we thought. So it was good to see them there talking a bit about that, and a little bit about the mentality in the game and what we're trying to do. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and just saying that one thing that will be interesting that we should talk not now but another time is actually how the kinetic elements of the game, like choosing rings and going for specific provinces and assigning people and stuff like that, does actually make the game hugely watchable compared to something more abstract like Magic. Because you have players actually directing the action on the board. You can see there are clear, visible markers of the decisions that they are making while they are making them. So just in terms of watchability, the game is really surprisingly watchable for a card game. Really watchable. So
yeah, it's interesting. I went back and watched the Alpha Vor design panel from Gen Con. With kind of the whole design team and Kat from the story team, and they talked about sort of just the process. And one of the things that kind of was quite influential was one of the studio directors coming over while they were sort of had a mock-up of the ring tokens, and just saying that looks really cool, like without knowing much else about the game, but just his thought was actually that visible structure of the ring tokens and assigning those and flipping them up, and just is visually impactful, and so you can see how that's kind of led to
it's much more akin to an online card game like Hearthstone than it is to a traditional CCG, which is honestly fantastic in terms of just viewing the game and seeing how it's going.
Yeah. And it's worth mentioning there was 3 Hatamoto. There was Mike Alexander playing Dragon, or Mike Schickel, if people know him better that way, or they may know him better as a Shameful Display on Twitch and YouTube. Go check out his channel; it's very good. You sometimes see Baz playing him. There was also Stefan Rock'n'Sub playing Crab, and Gregory Miguel Enriquez playing Crane. Apologies if I got those names butchered pronunciation wise, but a nice spread of clans there as well. Crane, Crab, and Dragon in perfect, almost perfect alphabetical order. So, any other thoughts on the events? Anyone kind of sort of learned anything about playstyle or sort of kind of lessons learned that's kind of stands out from
Glad
the
to
games?
be leaving single core behind. I think that's. But it was brilliantly run. Actually, one of the things that wasn't mentioned was just how much effort and expense FFG and Alex Watkins, just in terms of organization, had put into the event. Like there was the main tournament room, which was set up just as tables, chairs, whatever. But there was an entire back room which had been decked out in foam and paper shoji screens, fake shoji screens. They had, tons of games there for people to play. The food, the lunch was simple but absolutely fantastic. Really good food, and just there was a huge amount of enthusiasm from the FFG guys and from the Patriot guys as well that they brought down to run it, who ran it fantastically. By the way, the tiebreaker situation never caused any delay. Tournament ran smooth, quickly, efficiently. And all in all, there was there's not a single negative to talk about with regards to the event. It was just brilliant, and if this is what we can look forward to in the future, then it's going to be an amazing experience playing Five Rings for the next few years.
Cool. Okay. So. Maybe just a quick mention of the news of the announcement of Battle for Rokugan, a board game that FFG have announced, set in Rokugan and the L5 War world. I know I was a little bit surprised to see that sort of coming out quite hot on the heels of the game itself, the card game. Anyone have any sort of quick thoughts on that?
It seems to be based on their Game of Thrones board game, in that it's an area control game with a lot of negotiation. There's no dice, no randomizers really. It's literally you picking where you commit your forces and negotiating with other people to kind of support them or mess with them or whatever else. It's interesting as well because I think they have learned a few things from Game of Thrones. I don't know if you ever played Game of Thrones, but at certain player counts, the game has difficulty because certain people are given way too much space to expand into. And for example, if you have, Greyjoy, you have to have Lannister, or Greyjoy are going to run away with it. That sort of thing. So it is interesting, and it's interesting that although it has the 7 clans are available, I think it's played between 2 and 5 people. So that means that they presumably have some way of balancing the setup or balancing the thing, and not just going, it's Crab but no Crane. I guess Crab are going to drive north. It'll be interesting to see how that one works out. They have put in lots of neutral places to fight over as well, which is always good. And it'll be very interesting to see. I look forward to trying it out. Game of Thrones was a good game. It just had issues around, someone's got to play Lannister because Greyjoy are being played. Be interesting to see what it looks like now.
Yeah. Justin, will you be eagerly awaiting Battle for Rock again?
Again, the issues notwithstanding, and there were a couple with their Game of Thrones game. I've spent many evenings, many hours over many evenings with friends having a great time, basically ruining each other across a across the map of Westeros. So I look forward to doing.
They weren't friends afterwards, but they were friends at the start of the evening.
But that's you either win or you're dead. So yeah, I absolutely look forward to doing the same across a giant map of rock again. Should be fun.
Yeah. Okay, so we are coming up on 90 minutes. We had talked about doing some deck stuff. Do we still want to do that? Do we want to take a break and do that? Or do you want to do that separately? Your thoughts, guys?
Well, it's Owen's deck, so Owen.
This is my single core crab deck. I can give you you don't have a huge amount of choices. I can explain why I made all the choices I made in probably about 10 minutes.
Let's do it.
Great, let's just do it. Okay. Let me bring up the deck list. Alright, so yeah, maybe we talk rule choice and provinces to start, and then go
right, so my first choice was the choice between Seeker and Keeper. Keeper has a lot of explosive stuff going for it in terms of, hey, you get two, if you get see those two Keeper initiates early, they're going to keep coming and keep coming. But in single core, it's a little more unpredictable, so I went with what I thought was the best option I could, which was Seeker of Earth, which gave me 2 Earth provinces. The reason for that is I had ancestral lands to sit under my stronghold. So that meant that if you wanted to take me out of the game by actually breaking my last province, you either had to beat me by 13 politically or 8 militarily. And that is going to be tough against Crab. So I was pretty confident of being able to defend and swing back for the win if it ever came to that. Now, it didn't, but if it was there, if I needed it. The reason I ran Defend the Wall is actually, it doesn't seem that strong when you're reading it, but when you have it in play, it's actually horrible. And I had Defend the Wall and Pilgrimage there as 2 provinces that are incredibly difficult to take. And then I played Elemental Fury because I needed to play either a water and a fire. And I went with Elemental Fury. With the benefit of hindsight, I think Meditations of the Tau might have been better. And for air, I played Manicured Gardens just so I would get an extra bit of fate every so often. Both of those were good. It did give me, between the Seeker trait and Manicured Garden, it gave me 3 provinces that gave me a fate when they were either revealed or I took an action. So that was all good. In my Dynasty, I played all of the Crab people. I threw in 3 Maya Mystic, 3 Atomic Courtier, 3 Second Guardsmen, the 2 Secret Initiates, and then 2 Wandering Ronin. I didn't play the 6 holdings I could have because I was worried about seeing multiple holdings at once and costing me a turn, because I didn't think I had the consistent high cost guys or lots of characters in my hand to make up for that. So I only went with 4 holdings. In the Conflict deck, Crab have issues in single core with cards they can play. A lot of the better cards are political or courtier gated. For example, For Shame and Outwit both require a courtier. So I couldn't play Outwit, but I really liked For Shame. So I put in 2 For Shame, which is basically you need to have a courtier, and it's in the current conflict, and it's your opponent. You choose a guy your opponent either dishonors or bows them. And what I went with that was to make sure I'd access those courtiers, because Crab only have a single courtier, the Shrewd Yasuki, plus the 3 Atomo courtiers. I went influenced in Crane, and I put in Political Rival and Steward of Law. Now, Steward of Law won me a few games with For Shame, just by going, I play Steward of Law, For Shame, your guy bows. And that was pretty strong. I had Admit Defeat, which is also a good offensive action. If they got a lone defender, you bow them, and in single core, they have a lone defender a lot. And I used Duelist Training, and Duelist Training was pretty solid. If I got it on Casada, it was really, really impressive. Political Rival is a really strong conflict character. He is 3 cost, zip, 3 politics, covert, and plus 3 politics, 1 defending. So great defender, great attacker. And the only Crab card I cut was Levy, because I thought I wouldn't be able to consistently arrange matters. I've actually got Levy on there. Levy shouldn't be on there. I think I was running 2 Spies of Court instead. Yeah, I cut Levy. So yeah.
Okay. Ooh,
We've added
interesting
special effects.
background jingles. Great. I like it. It's the deck list jingle. It's part of the segment. Cool. And did you try dragon as splashing, or did you try splashing
I
some
tried
other
dragon.
scorpion or
It
other
was
options?
perfectly acceptable. I just felt the dragon made my fate deck. I was only running stuff like charge instead. To be honest, on reflection, I take out Good Omen as well because of the way I was playing the deck. I was playing the deck where I was just bidding one every turn, and that meant unless I saw Good Omen in my opening hand, Good Omen did nothing because I was bidding one every turn after that, and because my opponent realized what I was doing was also bidding one every turn. So Good Omen didn't do a huge amount for me. And Crab kind of struggled with the amount of the events I'm not playing and stuff like I'm not playing Charge because Charge is fairly unpredictable in the format. You don't have enough consistently high cost guys to get value out of it.
Yeah.
Outwit is dodgy in Crab. You can kind of play it to defend when it's home with courtier, pumping with the box and then someone home. Not the best. Contingency Plan is a dishonor-ish card. You could kind of give it a go, but it's a very poor hand advantage, which makes it very expensive. You can get to that last point of honor, but it's a little bit dubious for that reason. And we don't have enough Shigenja to run Cloud the Mind because Crab only Crab's problem is they are almost entirely Bushi. It is a wall of Bushi. The non-Bushi are the Steadfast Witch Hunter, who's a Shigenja, and the Shrewd Yasuki, who is a courtier. And I think everyone else in the Crab lineup is Bushi.
So you mentioned how you were bidding one a lot.
And
how were you going for the rings? Like, did you find yourself going for any particular rings, or did you find yourself defending a lot? Did you end up passing conflicts?
I defended quite a lot. I found in the single core format, it depended if I was going first or going second. Going second is better, certainly in the single core format, because it gives you an extra fate. It gives you first conflict on turn 2, and it also gives you first option to defend in turn 1. Turn 1, it is very unlikely someone will be able to do 2 conflicts and defend. It's unlikely they'll have 3 guys. It's possible, but it's unlikely. If they do 3 guys, they're often giving up board position nearly entirely. They're going to buy 1 guy with the fate on and 2 other guys. And at that point, Void starts looking really tempting. Whenever I could, I grabbed Void to maintain board presence. After that, it all depended. It was all contingent on what was on the board. If Water would bow out a defender, I would often go Water. If I thought I could they'd bid high and I was going to put some pressure on with Air, I'd go for Air or Fire. Both were good at that. Because Fire can get you off and Air can get you, Fire can get you a Dishonor guy who's going to lead that turn. That's another point of honor hit. And it can also cripple a high glory guy. Air can directly take an honor off them, which is pretty significant. And Earth gave you more cards, and considering you're drawing 1 card a turn, basically every ring was a good option depending on the board state.
Yeah.
There was no ring I would say, oh, absolutely this ring, everything. Void was my closest to first pick every game. If Void was there, I consider it.
If you were defending, did you find yourself getting the Imperial favor a lot?
Yeah. So the big thing was, because I defended so much, I tended to win that ring. And then I took a ring. And if my opponent then swung and I had a guy left over, I was getting 3 rings and they were getting 1. So I was getting the favor. What often happened was they then decided to defend 1. So if it got the situation where it might only be, there might be either no ring change or I would get enough to get the first ring. And if that happened, I was pretty happy, to be honest. Because it meant that if you get the favor, you often keep the favor. Because people are unwilling to do something like, for example, leave a guy unbowed, not use them all on the turn to count their glory. Phoenix can do it because they have that innate high glory guys.
Yeah.
But most of the people do not.
And then with the Atomo Courtier and the 7 Guardsmen, that's going to affect the board a lot.
It's huge in the environment because of that. The Courtier and the Guardsmen not being able to attack, if your opponent flips them, they could just be in a horrible situation. At one point, I had my final attack into someone who had 3 Seppin Guardsmen and I had the favor, and I went politics, and they were like, oh. No defense for me.
Rough.
Yeah. So yeah.
And was there any matchups that you particularly like, or matchups that you found particularly
Scorpion
tough?
were tough because they could survive the bid 5. They could bid 5 turn 1 and then not immediately die. Or rather not immediately die, but die on turn 3 then. So that they were a bit tougher for that reason, because they can just grab that little bit of extra honor back, which is pretty significant. Other than that, like, all the clans have their own little challenges to them. If you get hit with a turn 1 clan champion, well, it's interesting against Crab, because I had someone at one point with an empty board put out a clan champion with 3 fate on them. And I went, okay, way to Crab. And the person smacked it forward and said, I forgot that card existed. So Crab made that strategy a little more risky, which is lovely.
Yeah, and even when you played completely right, and one of the recordings of the L5R Honored had James Pigeon playing Unicorn. I actually played him in one of the rounds. He was playing right against the Crab player, so I think he made an Atomo Courtier or a 7 Guardsman first, then he made his clan champion. And all that happened was that small guy got assassinated, and then the clan champion got away with the Crab. So, yeah, even when you're doing everything right, it still goes horrible.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I think in the future we will look at doing some more of these, and probably some 3-core decks as we sort of get to know more of the decks, more of the meta, and get a bit more experience at what's at the decks themselves, rather than just sort of guessing. So I think that just leaves us with the most important part of the show, which is the beaver effect. Owen,
yeah,
are you ready for the beaver effect?
Beaver tail was considered a delicacy in Canada. Now, that was possibly a regional delicacy, in that it's something to get people who go there to eat and then laugh at them. But apparently, I read this fact and laughed out loud. Apparently, Barack Obama ate a beaver tail recently in a visit to Canada. However, it was made of dough. So, like, does that count as a beaver tail? Can you just go, well, it was shaped like...
Is that dough as in female deer?
No, dough as in wheat, wheat flour and water. I was like, really? You're going to call that a beaver tail? It was shaped like a beaver tail, I suppose, but, that's not a beaver tail. Beaver tail at one point was attached to a beaver.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah. Disappointing. I know, exactly. You could have laughed at him eating beaver tail. Alright, I think that'll wrap it up. Thanks, guys, for all your insight and wisdom. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, or possibly with something before then, but we can't say anything about that at the moment. So, take care.
Take it easy.
And bye,
Thanks for watching.
guys.